All right. So today, I went away from the I was going to do this nice, wonderful, soft, sunlit landscape. The last minute, I decided, what the hell? Let's do a rock and roller. It's a photo that I took probably 15 years ago at an outdoor concert in Tuscany above Lake Trasimeno. And they have a blues festival there every year. And so they had this group come and play. And I was there with a whole group of students. And we were just kind of kicking back and watching this thing. And I took my camera and I just bought a 300 millimeter lens and took some photos. And I've always had this photo around thinking I'm going to do something with it someday, and never did anything. And finally, I thought, let's do something a little different than some of the stuff I've been doing. So I took my trusty fine charcoal and kind of sketched out approximately what's going on here, and we're going to start painting and see if we can kind of make this guy come to life, give him a little bit of action with some of the type of painting I'm going to do. So let's go for it. I as I mentioned it many times, is I have this fascination with musicians. In fact, I'm doing a whole series on my own right now of 50s kind of pre-rock and roll singers. So, but this is my era. So I mix up as close to a black as I can with my asphaltum and ultramarine blue, put a little medium and a little terp together. I added something to my medium. I bought some of this solvent-free, Gamblin solvent-free liquid and gel. It's not the gel that you squeeze out, it's the liquid, and it tends to be a little sticky. So I have to add a little terp to it to get it to flow really nice. But I want it because I want to be able to get this in quickly. So I'm using my hopefully, God, I laid out a whole bunch of extra asphaltum and blue because I knew I was going to need it. So we want to get some of this activity in. It's vine charcoal drawing, so it's going to smear pretty easily. You can fix it, give it a really good coat of spray fix, but my drawing wasn't that perfect anyway, so. So we get this kind of laid in, and this is going to soak into this piece of 18 by 24 hardboard that I've toned. And once again, just so you can kind of see what the tone, that's about the tone that it is. So it's kind of a light beige, kind of a cool beige color. And once, I thought about doing it on white because this would have been kind of cool to do almost as a mixed medium piece on white, but I kind of wanted to stay true to the oils, and that's how I ended up with what I ended up with. So we're going to kind of get this laid in as quickly as I can, simply so we can get into the painting of the character. So I want some kind of cool. We're going to lose some edges, bring some of that into his hair. Well, I've got this color, this kind of beautiful dark. I'm going to lose a lot of edges.
Is that okay? Lighting?
Yeah.
Let's see if that would help with the glare.
You can see how wet it is. If I really press hard, I actually squeeze some of the terp out. Like I say, I always kind of do what I've kind of mentioned many, many, many times, and I just kind of plow ahead, kind of like I was right, and at the same time be aware that most likely I'm wrong in a lot of areas. So let's see, just kind of, so I end up with kind of a silhouette of the faster I get this laid in, and this is, this is not much different than I would paint if I was painting on my own. In a lot of instances, what I demonstrate is a little bit different if I were just sitting in my studio, because I'd be going a lot slower. But I still would put this down with a lot of gusto. That's a cool word, isn't it? Gusto. Reminds me, there was a great television commercial. You only go around once. I think it was Schlitz. You only go around once. You got to go around with gusto.
Is this on masonite panel?
Yeah, it's on a piece of masonite hardboard. Just coated it this morning. Just gave it a little gesso this morning, knowing that I was going to do. Not knowing when I coated it, I really didn't know what I was going to be doing. I had 2 or 3 images in mind, and ended up with this one at the last minute. With about the last 15 minutes, I kind of made a decision and said, let's do something a little bit more energetic and exciting than because I want to do some more landscapes. I have 2 or 3 in mind that I kind of have planned. So I do want to do some more landscapes. And although next week I'm going to actually do a painting of a little girl in an environment. So 2 weeks of the figure. Wow. Cool. I can never get enough of that. So I'm going to use this and just kind of mimic what I see as far as the darks go. Simplifying the darks. Simplify the darks, model the lights. Sometimes you simplify the lights and model the darks, depending on the kind of image that you're doing and the kind of lighting that specific image has. But in this case, it works because the shadows are pretty much obliterated. Kind of what a camera does when they see things is they simplify to one or the other, unless you're sitting there with a tripod and you do a very long exposure. And people that like to work ultra realistic may prefer that. I like a little energy in my painting, so sometimes I don't like everything to be spelled out as perfectly.
Michael wants to know, is the board large enough to add support on the back?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I add wood support.
I don't, on an 18 by 24, I don't add support.
Oh, you don't?
No. You don't need it. It depends on the kind of framing you do, too. We're close to me wanting to start to paint now. I make that stupid statement thinking that I haven't been painting. No, I've been painting, but I mean getting into the meat of this piece. Let's get this guy's little bit of shadow in his arm, back of his hand, a little bit. I'm going to put a little bit more umber into the color, or asphaltum. I got both umber and asphaltum, and what I did is I kind of laid them out right on top of each other on my palette. Cast shadow, a lot of cool lighting, stage lighting. And I was pretty far away. Like I said, I used my 300mm lens. And sometimes you shoot those 300mm lenses, and you shoot them at night with this kind of lighting, and you don't really know what you're going to get. Sometimes it's just awful. In this case, it came out actually pretty good. And the only thing that really happened, as I'm aware of, is the bright lights got all bleached out to almost pure white. And I will add a little bit more structure. I really won't paint those in that way, specifically in the beginning. I might add some really bright lights right at the end, but not the way we're going to start. Let's see, anything else maybe in here, just to give a little feel. Back of his hair, behind his ear, pretty dark. Loosen edges. Okay, so we have kind of the character of this thing laid out. It looks like I could lay in a lot of more dark right. Oh, let's see, it comes about here. Let's go here. Let's get rid of it. I'll find it later if I have to. It's kind of lost and found edges, the same concept. Lose edges, find them. Lose detail, find it again if you need it. May not need it. One last shadow and let's get painting.
So right now you're just laying in.
I'm laying in almost the exact same color, just kind of a simple dark. So I kind of have it mapped in terms of lights and shadows. The board being the light, this being the shadow. 1, 2, back of the thumb, right there. Anything here? Yeah, under the arm. And some shadows down here. They're probably wrong. I don't really care. Okay. We got enough of this thing laid in. We can make it kind of fun now. I'm going to set my little brush down that I've dirtied my hand with and pick up, say, a number, what have I got here? Number 10. Number 10 flat. All right. We're going to start top, work our way to the bottom. Pretty simple, right? So we're going to start up by the hair. And I see a lot of blue in the hair, so I'm going to take ultramarine, some white. Now that's going to give me a real pronounced blue. It's not that pronounced. So what am I going to kill that blue with? I can kill it with a little orange. I can kill it with a little brown. Either one. Either one is kind of a warm. This looks pretty good.
By killing it, you mean?
Excuse me?
I said by killing it, you mean?
Killing it. Thank you. I use terms, and if you guys don't catch me on it, usually Anna will catch me on it, which is good. Killing it, muting it, diminishing its intensity. So if you think of color, let's just talk a little bit about, let's do a little color lesson while we're painting here, okay? Color is made up of 3 properties. Value, how dark, how light a color is. Hue, hue is what most people refer to when they say color. Oh, that's red. Well, red is the hue. But within that hue, there can be intensity, there can be value. It can be a dark red, a light red. That's that. As soon as we say dark or light, we're implying the value of that particular hue. All right. And then there's intensity, the third property, one that is kind of talked about a little bit. And that is what a lot of people would want to refer to as the brightness. How bright is that color? How strong? That's the intensity. If it's really, really strong, it would be what we would call very intense. So we'll just start it that way. Okay. Now, if I find out that later on I have this up too high, I just take this background, and I love painting back and forth like this. Painting positive, painting a negative, and we can get a lot of energy in this piece as we move along. But we want to lay it in before we worry about that side of the painting. Okay, we want to really get the whole thing laid in there. So how far down? Well, it comes down to about, I'm going to put a little bit more umber into that. And we're going to bring it down a little bit more. I'm going to bring it down maybe in here, over in here. Okay, let's leave it alone and move on for right now. I'm not even deciding whether I like that or not. My first inclination is I don't. But I don't want to overjudge right now. Okay, let's move on to flesh tone. What do you say? So you look at his face for a second. We've got a lot of flesh tone. We got this is almost a pure white. Forget that. Okay. Then we've got kind of this nice gray flesh tone, and then we have a warmer flesh tone. And so I'm going to start kind of in this gray area. So and for that I'll use a raw sienna, a white, and a raw sienna. And that, what I search for initially is getting it to the value I want. Then I'm going to bring a little bit of burnt sienna into it, which is going to warm it up, probably a little too warm. Then I'm going to temper that or gray it down with a little bit of blue. That looks pretty good. I got a feeling I'm a little too light, but let's look. Yeah, I'm a lot too light. So more umber, more burnt sienna, more blue, more burnt sienna. That means I threw too much white into it in the beginning. Let's try that. A little bit better, little bit better. I don't know, it's a lot better, but it's a little bit better. And right now, that's all I can hope for. I see this hair being mussed up more in here, so I there we go. So let's start with that kind of, I'm going to go a little bit darker, a little bit more blue, a little bit more burnt sienna. Okay. Let's start with that. What do you say? Go up behind the ear and let's simplify it. Simplify it. Don't try and save all the little, oh, I see wrinkles there. I've got to save those. You know, you don't want to do that. Start simple, finish complex. So we just kind of block this in, back in here, up here. Little, I see it get a little darker. I'm going to add a little bit more blue, a little bit more burnt sienna. So I've darkened the color, keeping it kind of muted so it's not a bright. I don't want it bright right now. That's the last thing that I would really hope on this thing. Bright meaning colorful. A lot more burnt sienna now. If I look around the eye socket, I see a lot of warmth, and it's because stage lighting. So we're gonna, for that, I'm not gonna make it super hot. I'll just use a burnt sienna, which if you lay that next to the colors, it looks really hot. And I'm staying with as big a brush as I feel I can handle right now. I do not want to go small on the brush scale at this particular moment. There will come a moment in the painting when I definitely want to bear down there and get some of the smaller incremental important information down. But for right now, no. It's a shadow right there on his forehead. All right, now, same brush. I'm going to lighten that color just a little bit, lighten that burnt sienna because I see a little bit more warmth right down. Whoop, no, let's try it again. I think I'm going to bring a little umber into it because I don't want it too red right here. And what that is a shadow of his hair on his face. As it goes down into his chin, it gets a lot cooler. Cheekbone, a little warmer, but darker, but not hot. Right in here. Back behind the wing of the nostril, it always gets, because the skin that pinches together, it tends to get quite warm. So you can use a hot color. You can go as hot as you feel you can go. So I use burnt sienna pretty much. Now, let's go down on his nose. We're not going to paint his nose in. It looks really white, but I want it pretty warm. So I'm going to throw a little burnt sienna. I actually brought a little cat orange into it. It's going to look way too red right now. I warned you it was going to look too red. I don't care. I want it to start that way. And while I've got that nice red, maybe deepen it just a little bit. Not a lot, just a little bit. We'll kind of paint a little bit of a mass into his ear. Okay. So we're starting to get this thing coming together a little bit. Now I can add a little bit of brown to that burnt sienna because I want to darken this a little bit. As it goes up around his eyebrow. Whoop. I had a little extra paint on my brush and I don't like the way it came out. Corner of the eye socket. This could be a pretty painterly piece, hopefully with a little more energy than some of the figures that I've done. I have to kind of keep telling myself that because, you know, if I don't, I'll probably end up tightening the darn thing up. And moving away from what my initial concept was as far as the overall painting goes. So he has stage lighting, correct? So as it moves back into shadow, it gets pretty red back in there because there's a stage light hitting back right in here. So I just took that burnt sienna that I had, added a little bit of red to it, and by red, alizarin crimson. What the heck where am I getting that dirt? So I added to get rid of the dirt. That helped. Okay. I want to kind of lose that edge. I don't want that edge to be clearly defined. Let's go back to my asphaltum. So we darken the color right up at around where the nose is. Nope. I keep having other little colors because I'm using the same brush. Okay. We'll carve the nose down. I don't worry really at this point about extreme accuracy. I want energy, I want color, and I want it to appear kind of exciting. So I'm gonna amplify some of the color just a little bit. So I took a little cat orange and a little alizarin crimson, and we're gonna pump it. And we're gonna pump it here. Okay, pull it down. And on the front of his forehead, there's a front plane, and we see wrinkles, but we don't want to. I should call them wrinkles. This guy's a young guy. Furrows.
Expression lines.
Yeah, thank you. Expression lines. That's what I call everything on my face right now. Is I have a lot of expression lines. So we're carving that face around a little bit. We're still got to pull some darks in to make it work. We're gonna have some fun with that as we move along. Have to keep moving. I don't want, it's really easy at this particular moment to get hung up in the particulars of an area. And if we do, it might be wonderful if we turn this into a 4-hour painting. But because we're trying to make a complete energetic statement in a relatively short amount of time, I want to keep as much of this a little bigger than I wanted there, huh? We're not doing a portrait of the guy anyway. All right, let's keep moving. Okay. And as we move, let's get a little bit more going on down in here. It comes down underneath. It's going to carve in. It's eventually going to go a little bit lighter here. I've got that in my head. It's going to go lighter. I also picked up a little bit of, I laid out the light blue, and I'm going to bring a little bit more of a coolness right. Oh, I like that kind of color. Okay, it started to give the guy a little bit of a really, really interesting character. So we're going to pull the trough from the cheekbone, went a little too dark, right about there. We're going to pull it down and cool it off just a little bit as it moves down the face, right about in here. I darkened it, but I didn't cool it off enough. So I just took a little blue, added a little blue to that color. And there we go. All right, leave it alone. I will. Let's get the guy's shirt in. It's almost black, right? So I can almost go back to that same color and maybe just a hint of white to it, make it a little bit blue, a little bit white with the asphaltum to kind of mellow it. Perfect. Yeah, close to perfect. Boy, I like some of that edge quality there. Boy, I like that. Get away from the rigidness of trying to put this thing in too perfect right now. Let's darken it a little bit as it goes down. A little bit more blue, a little bit more asphaltum. That's how we're doing here. We're about 25 minutes into it. When I say those things, it reminds me of being back in class and telling my class, you're 25 minutes in, you got 15 more minutes, whatever. And then hearing people cringe.
Grown.
Still working with the number 10, by the way, you guys. Remember, that's not white. Remember, it's not white. It's important to keep in mind. Okay. That color anywhere else? Yeah, down below. But a little bit more blue. There is a little down here. I don't want to call as much attention to it. So I just threw a little bit of blue and light blue back into that. And let's get that color. Where is it? Right here. Here. Don't want it going all the way over there where I just put it. So we just kind of get rid of some of that, okay? So you can start to see, I want this thing to take shape so that I have time to really go in there and add interesting aspects to it. Where if we don't get it to lay in properly, no matter what I do to it, isn't going to make a big difference. So you want to initially get that thing laid in before you start worrying. And I know most people's tendency is to start worrying almost immediately. Oh, that isn't right. That isn't right. So we're trying to take that away from you and say, for lack of a better way of putting it, you have my permission, not that it really matters, to do some things that are wrong. Don't be afraid. If it's not working, all you got to do is go back and fix it. All right? It's that simple. If it's not working, you just go back and fix it. Okay, let's get the guy's shoulder in. One thing that I would like to get in that I haven't gotten in yet is, and since we're going to work back on the flesh tones, is his lip, lower lip, which is pretty red. So what am I doing? I've got a little bit of the cat orange still there. That's much more red than I want it, but I kind of want to start that way. Okay, so let's relate that to a shoulder. His shoulder's maybe not quite as red, so I brought more raw sienna into it because it's got a little bit more yellow into it. We're just going to kind of mix all those colors together, all that crummy, ugly blue that I had in the brush that I was using for this. We'll take a look here. Not too bad. I want a little more heat. What do I mean by heat? A little warmer. So I throw a little more cat orange into it, cat orange hue. Good. I want to see this edge. I'm using the brush this way because I don't want a sharp edge. So I'm using this part of the brush to create the edge instead of this part of the brush. Where here I want a sharp edge. I want to clarify that. As it goes down, it looks like it's maybe a little darker. I'm going to bring, for darker, I'm using a little bit more burnt sienna. And down on this part of the arm. So instead of always painting with the form, I will sometimes paint against the form because it adds movement, it adds character. Elbows tend to warm up, so I always warm them more than they are appearing. So it's kind of a nice way to get that base flesh tone started. It lightens up maybe, but it's pretty similar down on his bicep, up behind. Let's bring that over. Okay. On his hand, pretty similar, maybe a little lighter. So what am I doing? I took a little Naples yellow light, and I'm just going to block in. I don't want to spend a lot of time in the fingers because I've got to get this part of the guitar. Let's get that part of the thumb in. Right there. It's too fat.
Still using a large brush.
I'm still using the number 10. I want to do most of my lay-in with that because I'm starting to get some nice energy to it. I want to kind of let some of the strokes go outside and go back in with a little bit of some of the dark and hit. There's a little bit of a core in here. I can see comes down into the bicep. Now that should probably be warmer, but I just used blue. Bring it down in here, a little bit of stuff going on there. Right in here. Just kind of, don't be afraid. Just use your brush. Again, my intent in this right off the bat was to be pretty energetic with this, meaning I was going to not be ultra precise everywhere. That was my plan. And so far I've kept with it. In other words, sloppy's good. Come on, laying paint on paint. So got to be careful as you start to lay paint on paint. Now the other arm, let's look at that other arm. It gets a lot lighter. It's not more, so I just took the base flesh tone that I had and I added some I added some Naples yellow light to it. It's still a little on the red side, so I'm going to bring a little bit more, I think bring a little yellow ochre into it. We'll see what happens here. It feels too light. So I'm going to go back to raw sienna. Still on the yellow side. I want to get a nice rough edge there. Same with the back of the hand. Now, by putting my brush that way, I get a sharp edge. By really stroking it more like that, I get a soft edge. I get a kind of what you might look at it when upon first doing it and go, oh, Jess, I don't like that edge. It's kind of crummy. But it's what I'm after right now. And again, it is easier at the end to go back and say, oh, let's make it a little neater. It's a lot easier to do that than it is to go back and slop it up. So that's a technical term, slop it up. All right, so we're going to get his strap in with burnt sienna, raw sienna, a little asphaltum. We want it darker and warmer. That's pretty not bad. And you can see as it goes down, it gets more light and illuminates. So I just we took it that direction as we went down. And it's a little cooler. Whoa, I kind of like the sloppiness of the way the paint is mixing together is something I wasn't planning, but it's kind of neat. Those are those happy accidents that we kind of hope for. They don't always happen. And it's one of those things you go, when it happens, you say, I'm going to leave it. And then sometimes I remember as a student, I used to fight like hell to leave things, and sometimes to the detriment of the rest of the painting. So now I'm not as careful when it comes to that thing. I just figure, let some of that happen. It's starting to take form the way I want it to. Some of these little pops of reds that on that guitar, I can take the cad orange and the alizarin together and pop those in there. See, that's white. That's white. So it's about here. I want to be real indicative. Okay, red there, a little bit up above on that side of his finger, up above. So all you guys, all you rock and rollers out there. Okay. I'm stepping back every now and then just to see how this darn thing has come along, because up close, it looks pretty darn sloppy. And it's kind of what I wanted. This is the white part with a lot of blue in it, because I see a lot of blue in it. So I'm not making it up. Little energetic stroke there. Hopefully I hit it right. If I didn't, we'll fuss with it later. On the thumb, see, this red needs to go way up because this comes right there. That's where that white part comes. All right, let's go back and let's go on the neck of the guitar. Let's compare this to this. This is much darker than this is, right? So it just means I need to probably add a little bit more asphaltum. And if it's want to keep it on the red side, keep it on the red side. There we go. Maybe even a little darker. And it lightens up as it goes down. So I can bring more raw sienna into it as it comes down near this first finger. It looks like it goes around it. But we're so indicative here that we're so, by indicative, I mean not precise. And then it gets pretty red. I'm going to get it redder. I just added some more cat orange hue into it. Okay. And as it goes down the neck further, it gets lighter and not as intense. Down about in here. It gets actually cooler because it's cooler than the flesh tone. I'm adding a little blue to it. That's the little light blue. There we go. Okay. A little bit. I see a little bit of the reflection, believe it or not, on that right here of this finger. Okay, so we blobbed that in. So let's get these, finish off the fingers so we get them in there. And I can add to them whatever I need. As fingers go to the tips, I always warm them up. The extremities, ears, tips of fingers, tips of toes. It helps if you always warm them up. Now the little finger is really blurry. It's moving. So that's going to be kind of fun to do because we're going to put it in there. We're going to smear it. And that's right here. It's a little darker than the guitar itself. And it goes up and just fuzzes away. We just almost don't even see it. So it's in motion. Now, we're still missing these fingers, right? So let's get that finger, front of the fingers, the bottom of the thumb, which is quite hot. So I can actually go back to some of my red colors and pop in the bottom of the thumb. And tip of the finger. Okay, so we start to get some activity. I'm going to finish that off, clarify that a little bit in here. So we kind of want to keep those things. I don't want to over define anything at this particular moment. If I want things more clearly defined, I will do that towards the end. But what I find is once you start defining something, it's really hard for you sometimes emotionally to say, oh, I'm just going to fuzz that. I'm just going to diffuse that. So we're getting the look of this character down. Let's start in on the shoulder. I have kind of a big sloppy area of a multiple of flesh tones mixed up here. And I keep adding and changing. And so I'm going to lighten it up, cool it off a little bit. And as the shoulder comes this way, well, I probably could have cooled it off a little more. In fact, I just did. A little more. Just by throwing more of the light blue into it. The reason I'm using the light blue is I don't have to use white. If I use the light blue instead of the ultramarine, it's already keyed to a value, which is kind of where I'm shooting for. I want to blend it in at this point, kind of. So we started getting lighter. That looks pretty good. When I stand back, it feels okay. So I'm going to take that same color. I just, when I say stand back, I just pop back for a second. Got a little bit of a shoulder peeking through right about here. Okay. Take the same color and I'm going to throw it on the back of his neck. It's probably a little, could stand to have a little more heat. And if I have a little bit of a cool below it, it's even all the better. It just makes it more interesting. So we got a little light on the back of his neck. And what I'm looking at is the way this light comes down in here. Because eventually up on his shoulder, he's going to have a nice bright, like a something, my guess is about in that range. Yep. Lighter. Okay, so we start to give his shoulder a little character. And while I'm doing it, let's go back to his forehead, not to the whites. It's cooler. Well, think about this. White is cooler than colors that have red in them. We're not calling it a cool. We're just saying it's a cooler color. And we're going to put a little bit right in there. So we get that little piece of hair coming down. Step back. Every now and then you guys can't see, but I'm stepping, like taking one step back. Just let's go in this guy's eye. I'm going to switch down. I've done everything with the 10. Let me see what I got here. I want to switch to, let's say, a 6. And I know I've got one. Yeah, there's a 6. Here's a 6. Okay. I'm going to go back to kind of a grayer flesh tone, not as white as this, but I want to put right below his brow. And then same kind of color. Probably could have, say, with this little brush, I'm getting tight. I can feel it. It's weird. And I don't want to. Or is my old friend, who unfortunately is no longer with us, Frank Lanza, great name from the past. Was a wonderful gentleman, but I like when Frank would do something and he wasn't happy with it, he immediately said, I don't like it. So every time I say that, I think of him. Can't help it. You know, it's like certain teachers.
Mitchell wants to know, he's wondering if the stage lights were cool, making shadows warm and highlights.
Yeah, you can do it. I mean, I'm using the stage light that's here. Yeah, very often used. There is some cool light striking back. Look at the back of this. Look at the back of his arm. There's a beautiful blue. So I could take this beautiful blue with white, just pure with white, come up and right here, smack in. And I'm going to leave that just for now. I don't know if I want it there, but just because you asked. Why not, huh? Maybe even a little bit on the back of his arm, huh? Right in there, down here.
So are cool lights making shadows warm and highlights cool?
That's usually when you get stage lighting, you get light coming from all different angles. There's not necessarily, and a lot of times they'll do warm lights, cool lights. And so it can be really fun to paint. I'm doing a series of paintings right now where I'm actually making it up because I'm working from black and white photos. And I'm just going back to my old illustration roots where we used to do a lot of film work, and do movie stars from black and white photos. And you need obviously a little experience about painting from life. It sure helps because you're using your knowledge of anatomy, coloration, that kind of thing, because you're playing with colors. And you're trying to enhance, always trying to enhance whatever is there. And that's, as I paint on this, that's pretty much my goal. I want it to look like this, but with a little more energy. I want it to feel a little bit more interesting. Now, I want this to have a nice, beautiful, warm shadow, cast shadow from this. So we're going to kind of come back in here, put a shadow there, and maybe bring, nope, got to go darker. The shadow down there. Okay, let's leave it alone. Remove with kind of a grayer flesh tone. I want to get back into his face and do a lot more work later. Not right now. I'm going to watch my time so I can go in. Whoops, I didn't want to do that at the end, and really kind of have a little fun up on the face. The rest of it, I want to be just tons of energy. And I want it to feel correct. Very important that what I just said, I want it to feel correct. Threw a little bit more red in there. So I'm grabbing this red with a little, it's cat orange with a little alizarin crimson. And we're going to kind of pop a few little clarifications in some of these areas. And we're going to go darker. Let's go back to my flesh tones. Darker, warmer flesh tones. What we're going to do, let's clarify that finger just a little bit. But didn't warm it up enough. Throw some more alizarin crimson into it. That ought to do it, huh? Yeah, I like that. I'm gonna finish this up. That's pretty dark up in there. I haven't covered everything, and it kind of bothers me. So let's get the back part of this part of the guitar with the blue and the brown, because it's kind of getting lost. Almost can't see what it is. And then it goes down onto a cast shadow on his arm. In quoting some of these artists, I'm going to quote, we just lost Richard Schmidt, which is really a shame. And he had a saying that I used to love. If you can't figure it out, paint what you see, not what you know. I always like to try and figure it out, but I tend to agree with that. I always try and figure out. In other words, I try to know what I'm painting. But if I don't, I'll indicate it in there based on what I see. Now let's get a little bit more of that eye socket in there. This is pretty dark and red. I can take almost straight raw sienna. Let's try straight without even mixing it down. Excuse me, burnt sienna. Get my siennas mixed up, huh? Okay, his face is coming alive a little bit, and it still is energetic, which is what, I mentioned that right in the beginning. It's not as clarified as I want it to be. I will clarify it, but I'm looking at my time and I'm saying, okay, I know I have time where I can clarify it at the end. So we strengthened the cheekbone. I'm going to fuss with the fingers in a little bit. As the strap, the guitar strap goes down, it tends to receive a little bit more cool light. And it's my job. There's a little knob. Whoops, do it again. There. Okay. Shaping up. So one of the things I'm going to do is on that guitar strap, there are darks. Right there. Little control. Right there and on this side. Okay, I kind of like that. Now, as the guitar strap goes down, I'm beginning to see more color in things and color variations, and that's what I'm going to begin to play with to help with the energy. So I see it starts getting quite blue and cool. So I've took my light blue and white, much the same as I did right here, a little bit more blue maybe. And as this dark part of the strap goes down, it starts to pick up some blue right about in here. And that adds a little bit of energy. Now, as it goes down further on the strap, at about this point, I'm going to throw a little a little Naples yellow light. It tends to get a little lighter. And that's that light kind of shimmering off of it. And you can see how it starts to make things a little bit more interesting. Now we go under that arm. There is looks like there's a guard on the guitar right about, and it's kind of in the raw sienna area about here. That comes down on this side of the finger and then comes up. It's a little lighter there. Okay, just leave it alone. You want to get this part of the arm. It's got, now that I look at it, it's got all these veins. I don't want to paint veins. It just, veins, when you start painting veins, you start isolating and really refining it to a degree where you lose energy. It's very focused. Now it's what the camera did. So you have to make a decision as to how much of that you're going to use. And I'm not going to use very much of it. So I'm going to take that nice light flesh tone here, which is similar to what I did up in here. And it's a flesh tone that's been cooled down a little bit. Still has a lot of light in it. Let's see where I am here. Close. Okay. And we'll kind of hit it the way we see light hitting the arm. Okay. Starting to work pretty good. Not nowhere near as light here, but it works on the back of the hand, right there. Down on the thumb. Down towards the knuckle on the index finger. I had to step back, see how it's working. So it's okay. I'm not crazy about it, but it's okay. Need a little bit of information, not a lot, so it isn't too flat in here. Okay. I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going to move over to this arm. Lot darker and warmer. More raw sienna. Let's start with that. That looks pretty good, actually. Let's start with that. A little sharp edge. I don't know that I want that sharp of an edge there. I like some of the paint characteristics I'm getting on it, particularly when I use that bigger brush. I think when I switched down to this brush, I kind of lost something. Going to use the side of the brush a little more. That's helping. That's actually helping quite a bit. By using the tip of that brush, I was clearly over defining, particularly as I move away from my focal point, which is his face. Probably a little too light there. Need a little bit more dimension on that arm. So I have a warm white. And let's see what that does if I mix it right back into that light color, because I may want to use it up in here too. But you know, I'm gonna cool that down with some blue. Let's try this. Let's see what it looks like. Kind of like it. Yeah, I do. I like it. Couldn't tell till I stood back. Okay. Let's go back up into the head for a little bit. If I had to, I could even leave this almost. Don't like that, those fingers. Those fingers, these definitely need to be clarified a little bit more. I'll tell you what, it's more fun to paint like this. You know, it's like sometimes you don't like the results as much, but these are the kind of paintings that a lot of times when I look at them a week later, I like them better.
Why do you think that is?
It's because you're looking at when you're painting. This goes for almost everybody. When you're painting is a matter of moving ahead and correcting problems. And that's what we're doing. Because every stroke you put down isn't exactly the way you want it. So you're constantly going back and fussing and fixing problems. So when you get away from it, you're really not back into your problems. You get away from it, all of a sudden you get a chance to see it in a different light, almost like somebody walking into a gallery might see it for the very first time. You don't look at the problems. If there is a problem, it'll jump out and it'll tell you, oh my God, there's a problem, fix it. In that regard, sometimes I'll go back and fix it. This is how I paint when I finish paintings over a period of time. I will paint them, leave them alone, go back, correct them if necessary, but literally not sit there and dwell on them. And keep moving throughout the painting. Okay, then go back. I need to go into his ear. Kind of left that alone. Let's get some of the interiors in. Then I'm gonna have to come back onto his hair, because the hair I just started with, it's just laid in. It's kind of clumsy. I can really make that hair a lot more interesting. Okay. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else I think I need to do right away. I get a little warmer right there. And on this part of the eye lid, it's not just the eye, it's the eyelid. Okay. Let's go back into the forehead. We're going to go a little lighter. I'm going to add a little bit of warm white and a little bit of blue. And a lot of medium. And we're going to let it jump. It's not white. Light touches because you got just a little medium on your brush. So you don't need to press hard. So you can see how you bring this thing up. If you play your cards right and you don't go too light too fast, it gives you room to move. So you can go back and manipulate values and colors. Now, there's a few little strokes right in here, for example. I think that's too harsh. So I'm just going back and softening. However, let's get a little bit more into the fingers. Okay. I'm just stepping back every now and then because I want to check. Go back into that ear. It's not that white, quite the white light. It's mixed back into a flesh. Now I'm going to put a little stronger light in his cheekbone. Nice tip on the brush. There's a cheekbone, and I always like to put a little bit of light towards the tip of the nose because that's where the most structure occurs. Now, as it goes down into what we would call the muzzle of the mouth, it goes a little cooler. So I'm standing back. It's coming alive, let's put it that way. If someone says, are you happy with it? Well, my concept, remember when I started this thing, was to keep it energetic. Not stiff and over rendered. So I wanted to keep a lot of energy in my painting. Jawline. Basically, it's working pretty good. Let's put it that way. There are things that I do and don't like, but I do need to literally clarify some of the elements that are not working. Now, those two back fingers, let's see if this brush, if I can do it a little bit better with this brush. I want the gestural stroke of the finger. I used to love, hell, I still love it, the wonderful fingers that John Singer Sargent would do in his portraits, because they weren't rendered. They were there. And it looked to me like he may have worked and worked and worked and then gone back and simplified. I kind of like that thumb. It's almost not there, but the tip of that one finger goes into deep shadow, which is almost pure right. There. And going back and defining a little bit of the shadow, a little bit more red on this finger. So we got a little bit of it working there. I want to go back now. Kind of like some of that stuff that's happening in there. What I need to get is his wristband down on this wrist, which I kind of lost it. right about in here. Right, it was in there, and then I lost it. Now we're going to find it again. That's good. I even like the little gunk of a stroke that I got there by accident. Again, happy accidents. Sometimes they work for you, and sometimes they don't. Straight blue, a little bit on right here and right there. All right, I want to fix this. This kind of bothers me. I see a little bit of some structural changes right about there.
Sorry. Squeaky chair.
So I'm going to take a small brush. Yeah, let's just take this one. I don't want to take a little liner, but I do want to hit some of the frets and then the strings. That's the hardest part, man. I'm in the middle of this painting that I'm doing for myself of Elvis Presley, and I just laid off, got it where it's working, and I've laid off the guitar stuff because it's like you got to make the strokes meaningful, unlabored, yet definitive. So we're putting a little bit of activity up in there. Don't like that. I don't know what the hell. Oh, I put that red reflected light down in there. What the hell was I thinking? Let's get rid of that. There, it's better. Some little things that I do and don't like happening. I want to get the frets in. So we're going to start, they're dark and they're light. So first we're going to lay them in all dark. So I'm going to put my hand here. I'm going to look. It looks like the first one might be right about here. Yeah, that looks about right. And second one. And then you got to, I'm not going to count them. I just want to put a few in to give an indication that I know what a guitar is. Okay. And then they get lights. So you let the viewer's imagination fill in the rest. You don't have to over define everything. So this is just pure warm white. There's a little bit of blue in it sometimes. So I went back, picked up some of that blue. It feels right. It feels like it's active. It feels right. Now, as it continues on all the way down to the bottom, they feel bluer. So what I've done is I've gone back with the color that I had and I just mixed it back into the blue. And we're going to kind of just pop them in here. Got to keep the perspective feel. Wasn't wet enough because I'm getting real thick strokes. Okay, it feels right. The main thing is, how does it feel? Does it feel complete? Does it feel correct? Now, in my estimation, it does. I might feel different in a day. But right now, it's doing what I want it to. To clarify a little bit more of that shadow. I still want to go back into his hair. Okay, I want to put a little bit of light on that lower lip. And it appears to be right about, whoops, there. I'm going to leave it. It's kind of a sloppy stroke. I didn't want it to do that, but I'm going to leave it for right now. I don't want to overcorrect. Trust your, for lack of a better word, trust your sloppy strokes. Okay? Chaos down in there, but it almost reads like what I want it to. The fingers to me feel wooden, and they're not exactly the way I want them. One of the things I know I can do right now is I can bring this guitar up higher, up about in there. All right, so I'm gonna go to the background, the blue and the asphaltum. I got to clean enough of this white color out of my brush. I may have to go back with my big brush. Yeah, I do. I'm going to go back with the brush I started with, which was my, there we go. So now I'm going to kind of come in and we're going to kind of get that hair. We're going to really glisten it up a little bit.
Chuck Todd said he loves the quote of the day, trust your sloppy strokes.
Every now and then I actually do come up with something that hopefully that makes sense to you guys. I mean, and what I'm really referring to also is a style of painting. And that's why I preface the beginning of this painting by saying, I want this to be an energetic painting. I'm not trying to do pristine realism here. Hopefully you realize that, because if you think I am, then you must think I really messed up, because I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to keep it accurate, but unrefined. Lighter. I'm just looking just to clarify a few things. This is that really moment of clarification about how far do I want to really define anything for that matter. So let me get a good sized brush. I just as soon do that with this. Hell with it. I'm going to play around. I'm going to use a fan. And I'm going to mix some more blue into that color, loosen it up a lot, because the fans are real flimsy little brushes like this. And what I'm going to do is, that's too light, I can tell you. As soon as I held my brush up, I could tell it was too light. So I added a little bit more ultramarine into it, and I've got a little brown in there. Let's just start about here. That's still pretty light, isn't it? I wiped some of the paint off the brush. I'm going to go a little bit more ultramarine into that color and a little bit more terp. So, because I want to get. And why am I using a fan? I'll tell you. I'm using a fan simply because if you notice, those are hairs. So I don't have to paint little lines to create hairs. If I do, I'm overstating it. But by doing it this way, you create a lot of little hairs with a stroke. Now, granted that it's not as controlling as you might like or you might want to be, but again, let some of your strokes be a little bit more vague, a little bit more out of control, so to speak. Particularly this kind of hair. No offense to this guy. This was done so long ago. When we used to teach our study abroad, when we first started teaching it at the Academy of Art, we taught at a little town called Corciano. And I know Chuck, who's tunes in and gives some of the best commentary on these demos. Chuck did it a couple of times, and I we were fortunate to do it together once, which was a hell of a lot of fun. And so that's where this literally, this came from, is one of those events. So I'm going to take, and we're going to add a lot more white to it now and more light blue. And this is pretty strong stuff here, man.
This was an outdoor music event.
Yeah, outdoor music event. All right, I got it. I had so much paint on it. I just took my brush on a got to stand back and see if I've got it kind of shaping up pretty good. A little bit more in here, maybe. Now, if I go too far, which I just did, and I don't, it's interesting when I do these demos or when I do these live painting sessions, I don't do these with the intention of making mistakes. But sometimes it's kind of cool that I do, because I can show you the way that I like to go back and use mistakes. So what I did is I went back with the dark. See, I don't like that. That looks that just looks like it needs to be messed up. Let's mess this guy's hair up. It was too neat. So let's just kind of, and then go the other way with it. The other way meaning the dark. We just played with all the lights. You're probably getting a lot of glare. I just realized that, because I am.
I've been trying to move this around.
Yeah, I just realized it up in here, because I'm kind of getting a little bit. I'm going to take that color, amplify the blue in it just a little bit, and the light. Went too far, went too light, but we have some little pops of lighter blue that I want to begin to, one there. So call a little bit of information, a little detail, without making it, over defined, because it's not the star of the painting. We don't want that to be. We just want it to feel like it is a shirt, and it is kind of blue. But the premise of the painting is to get the action of the character, not necessarily the action of the shirt. But if I can find a way, like I can see right now, I could bring cool, where his beard is right in here, a little bit more control. Let's go down. The part I told you I didn't like, I'm going to fuss on a little bit right now, and that's the fingers. But I don't want them to become tight. I enjoy this kind of exercise as far as a painting goes. I just think these quick, larger figurative pieces, sometimes you learn things that if you do want to paint a more refined piece eventually, not necessarily of this, but of anything, that you've actually learned something that you can apply as you move into trying to do pieces that are more refined. And what you learn is that you can hang on to some of these energetic strokes and only define what you feel really needs to be defined. Boy, that sure helped. That may be the best thing I did lately. Isn't that weird? You do one little thing and all of a sudden it begins to change. This is painting. stepping back. Some of the reds in here bother me just a little bit. As when I step back, I look at the whole painting. I definitely try not to hone in on one area. So I'm going to diminish that just a little bit. That's better. So now there, that helped a lot, just to knock that back a little bit. Let's see, one. There's another little pull right about there. And it just adds a little more dimension to his face. Don't like this. I think this could probably be worked out a little bit better. Yeah, smart move. Anything I can do up in here? Now, one of the things that I kind of want to do in this thing, just for fun, and I have no idea whether this is going to look good or not. If it doesn't, I just take it out. But it's just something I thought about. Because see all this kind of stuff over in here? I kind of like some of that, but I don't want to paint that those are actually guitar parts and things of that nature. So I took the light blue, I took a little sap green and some ultramarine. I'm going to look for a second.
I was wondering if you were going to do any of that.
I'm going to take that and make it a little violet. A little more ultramarine. A little more white. A little more ultramarine.
Chuck Todd has a question. Choosing where to refine, is that based on what you're interested in, or more how you want to lead the viewer's eye and create hierarchy in your painting?
Second one. And the second one and the first one kind of go together, but you know, you do generally want to control the viewer's eye. I don't think of that. I really consciously do not think of that. I know it's more what I like and what I want. So I guess it's more of, it's all about me. I'm the painter. And I want to do what I want to do. Now, it depends on what you're painting too. At times you may want something. I mean, I thought about doing that kind of stuff just for the sake of energy, just to have some of that going on in here. And I would make this is actually the back of the woman who was actually the star of the show. So, but my image was of him, and that's what I kind of liked. So I dealt with that part of it. And I used a little bit of what I saw, but I like to change it. And like I say, I want this to be a fun painting to look at. I want it to feel like rock and roll, as opposed to a 100% accurate depiction of this character, this star. So I just want it to feel like, the energy that rock and roll generally has, I want the painting to have. And once again, that becomes extremely personal. It goes back to the question you asked. What is it? Is it where you want the viewer to look? Well, I guess it is. I don't think of it that way, but it probably is, because it's where I find the most interest is in this guy's face and the activity down in his hands. So if anything I can do to amplify that, is pretty much what I'm after here. So as this comes up, this gets whiter. And I'm just paint into paint at this point. It's really kind of fun. And then there are strings on the guitar. Do I want to hit those? Yeah, let's hit a few. What the hell? Again, I hate to use a liner, but I think I'm gonna. This is just a lot of medium. A lot of medium. Okay, let's start with a stroke here. I almost don't want to do it. Oh, look what I did. Let's fix it. Let's fix it. Sometimes you do some cool things with your fingers. I mean, it's really weird. It's not all, or knife. I don't want to overstate these because they're really not, it's not about all the strings, even though you want enough of that accuracy in there. And it's very, I'm adding a lot of Turk, by the way, in case you guys, I have to, because I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to put any more strings into it. I've already muffed up a little bit in here and there. I do want to fix the thumb. It bothers me. And I'm going to do it in two ways. Number one, I'm going to take the background, which is the shirt, and I'm going to come in, I'm going to fix that part of the thumb. That may be all I need, by the way. I don't know. Because I don't want, again, I don't want it to be a rendering. Think of this as a little bit of expressionism, not just. So you want it to have the energy that he has, and he's moving. I mean, this guy's up there bopping around and powering down his guitar. And so that's kind of what I want the painting to feel like. That's a watch he's wearing. Son of a gun. I just caught that. Got a little bit of a couple little highlights down in here, which are kind of nice. Little touches. Okay, let's see if there's anything else that I'm kind of, some of the activity bothers me. I don't like that. I'm going to fuss on his hair a little bit more. We're just about done. Now, sometimes I just go crazy and lose everything and then go back and find things. Example, let me do something right now. Get rid of most of the pigment on that brush. Go back to my what I started with was almost a black, blue, and the asphaltum. And I want to diminish that. It was too powerful. It's taken away from him. Don't mind that. Don't mind that. Maybe. Kind of like that. I might not in a week or in a day or two. I might look at it and go, what the hell was I thinking? You know, some of this is kind of reactive painting where you're literally reacting as you paint. It's very much along the line of what I do with my quick studies class. In other words, it's a lot of it is intuitive. You're just feeling your way through it, trying to make the thing work as best you can. It's probably very, very, usually if I bring vertical strokes down, the light will not reflect as much on it as if I'm painting with horizontal, because horizontal strokes, it catches the ridges. So you might see more of a reflection here. But if you come down on it, usually you can diminish somewhat of the reflections that are occurring. Now, last thing there is, and if I look very carefully, I see it. This is the last thing I'm going to do. Then we're calling it quits. Very hot. This is burnt sienna. His cheekbone over in shadow. Little light there. So you can feel his head back in the shadow. Again, I don't like that little piece of red that I threw in there. Bring that eye socket down a little bit. See if there's any other thing that I can see right now. Otherwise, I'm gonna, I mean, there's a lot of little things that I see, particularly in the fingers. I think I could probably play with those a lot more. A lot of it just might be just a little tiny stroke here or there. Literally, that may be all it needs. Warmer at the knuckles, a little bit more red. Knuckles always tend to get a little bit warmer than other parts. Same with there, same here. I can actually see it on this one. I can actually see the warmth in those knuckles. So I think we've kind of painted this thing to death, but it was fun. I don't know, again, when I paint these things like this, I don't know how much I like them. There are parts that I do like very much, I can tell you. And then there are parts that I'm not sure about. But as far as the totality of the piece goes, again, I'll know in a couple days, or maybe even later this afternoon if I take a look at it and go, geez, if I just fix that, it'll work. You just, as you progress as an artist, you become more discerning with what you've done. And I think you're more trusting of letting certain things go a little bit more. So that's basically what I've done. I've let a lot of things go. I just figured, what the heck, let's see if we can make this work. And that's kind of what you're doing as you're painting. In any event, I don't think I'm going to go a lot further on this. I think I might. This is where you start playing and you start saying, what if I did this? What if I just took a knife and just spared it? Huh? What if I like that splotch there? That's a little heavy. So maybe let's take my finger and kind of loosen it. Oh, so much better. Huh? I can see a cool, right here. So you discover as you paint, let's kind of leave it at that. You discover things you do like and don't like. That's a nice chaotic hand. The word is chaotic. It's not a clean, it's not a refined. An individual who loves refined work is probably going to find nothing but fault with that hand. But, and when I was first painting, I'm sure I would have not been very happy with that. Now I look at it, I say, man, I let that go just about right. So, in any event, there's our chaotic rock and roller. Hope you guys got something out of it. It's a little bit different. Next, we're going to paint a little girl in a puddle. I already know that. I already picked my image. Thanks to our help at the Academy. Happy painting, everyone.